a day, and you can commit 100 murders a day, but as long as you have a lively faith, this will not tear you away from Christ. Well, I think people can be forgiven if they conclude from that good works are not that important. So what Luther started to see in his day was this phenomenon, whereby a tradition of good works began to dry up completely. In fact, Luther himself deeply regretted this and said, at least under the papacy, that is to say, at least under the Catholic Church, you didn't have to force people to be charitable. You didn't have to hold a gun to their heads. They would be charitable spontaneously. He says, whereas living under the gospel, and by under the gospel he means under Lutheranism, he says, not only do I see no charity, to the contrary, people are grasping at each other's belongings. People have become envious and self-centered. He was very interested in this. And throughout his life, he continued to observe good works by Catholics in hospitals and so forth. And it really was a rebuke to him. In fact, at one point, he got so frustrated with his fellow Germans that he tried to leave altogether. He just said, I just had it with you people. Nobody's living the gospel. Nobody's living the Christian life. Well, that's interesting. He had to concede. The Catholic Church had helped to make people charitable. Now, a couple years ago, I was interviewed in the Washington Post. So obviously somebody was fired over that, but I was interviewed in the Washington Post in their live online segment, which I really like, because it's a live question and answer session on the internet. And so readers can type in questions, and then I'm sitting at my computer and I'm seeing all the questions come in, and then I answer them. Well, the questions are coming in fast and furious, so if you didn't have carpal tunnel syndrome before this process, you definitely have it afterward. One of the questions I got I thought was very interesting, and I thought a fair question. The person asked, after all, however, isn't Catholic charity really at its root self-interested? Because, in fact, isn't the person engaged in charity because he expects a reward? He expects to go to heaven. So can't we really say that really Catholic people are no different from people in the ancient world? They're all seeking rewards. And so I thought that was a fair enough objection. So I explained, I gave this answer. And I hope this is a good enough answer. If you don't think it's a good enough answer, write to me and I'll give a better answer the next time. But I gave an answer that was twofold. I said, first of all, the Catholic Church recommends to us in effect tells us there are three different levels of sanctity when it comes to doing good. Some people do good simply because they're afraid of going to hell, and that's the only motivation that will reach those people. Now, that's considered to be sort of good enough, but it's certainly not the ideal. At the next level, people do good because, as the questioner suggests, they seek heaven. And now, I personally see nothing wrong with that. But even that is not the ultimate level that the Church recommends to us. The Church says there is a top level. There's a level at which people do good solely because they love God and they want to please God. And that's why they're doing their good works. Not for any expectation or hope of reward, but because they want to please the God they love. And I said to the questioner, this is what the Church is calling us to, is precisely this level of benevolence at which we're not thinking about ourselves. We're thinking only about God and only about doing good for its own sake. But then secondly, I said, consider Mother Teresa's missionaries of charity, because they're such an excellent example. I said, consider them. Now, you may say, they're doing all these good works and helping all these people who are in wretched conditions oftentimes, and the sickest of the sick and the poorest of the poor, and they're helping those people simply because they want to go to heaven. But they could go to heaven by working in an air-conditioned office. So what makes them want to work in Calcutta, places of that sort, or makes them want to work in AIDS hospices? I said, they can get to heaven doing those more comfortable things. They can be in an air-conditioned office. Why do they seek this out, then? If all they care about is going to heaven, they could do something else. And moreover, look into their eyes. Look into the eyes of one of those missionaries of charity nuns in one of these AIDS hospices, in which she's looking at patients who oftentimes during their lives have been alienated from the Church and sometimes even hostile. And when they look up from their beds at these women religious, all they see are eyes filled with love. And I said, can you really look in those eyes and say that all you see is a woman seeking a reward? That's all you see? Don't you see something there that is far deeper and more significant and more moving? That was my answer. And I think that is ultimately the answer. And in fact, the Christian God, following from the Hebrew tradition, believes that it is good for human beings to be good to each other. And this was something new among the religions of the ancient Near East. The gods of ancient Sumer didn't seem to care about the human race at all, or what they did. The gods of ancient Greece sometimes used human beings as playthings. They treated them arbitrarily. They were capricious toward human beings. They didn't seem to care how people behaved toward each other. If you wanted to satisfy some of those gods that I've mentioned, you could do so only through various kinds of ritual sacrifice and then just hope for the best. But our God is pleased not only by the sacrifice of the Mass, but is also pleased by good behavior. He cares about how we treat each other. This was something new under the sun. He doesn't want only ceremony, as important as that is, but he cares that we should be good. We should be good to each other, and that's one of the things that pleases him. And it should not come as a surprise that a God who teaches this is going to give a brand new morality to his people. So next time we're going to see how Western standards of morality have been shaped by the Church. So join me for the Catholic Church, builder of civilization, and I'll see you then.